Hey everybody, it's hwsteele. Today is January 7th, 2020, and in this video I'm going to start to lay the foundation for talking about the law of vibration. It's one of the most requested subjects I get through emails and messages and so forth, is talking about the law of vibration. So I thought this year I would go ahead and do that in several videos. But before we start on actually talking about the law of vibration, I have to talk about some foundational things, ideas, concepts, and a few misconceptions. And so I'll cover those in this video. And then the next law of vibration video I do, I'll talk a little bit more about the actual law of vibration as it's applied to markets. I have a pretty picture of a bee here. I thought that would be appropriate since the bees tend to vibrate quite a bit there. Anyway, we're going to start here. Let me find the tab. There we go. We're going to start with a description of the law of vibration itself. The law of vibration states that anything that exists in our universe, whether seen or unseen, broken down into and analyzed in its purest and most basic form, consists of pure energy or light which resonates and exists as a vibratory frequency or pattern. Whoa, that's a mouthful. More simple way to state the law of vibration is if it exists, it vibrates. And if it vibrates, it has to exist. And everything else, all descriptions of the law of vibration go beyond that. So basically, in its most basic form, the law of vibration is if it exists, it's going to vibrate. And if it vibrates, that means there's ways to categorize things and use them to our benefit, is a really good way to say it. So vibration. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are the four fundamental states of matter, as they have to do with vibration directly. The four states of matter are solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Now, in a solid, the particles, the ions, atoms, or molecules are closely packed together, and the forces between the particles are so strong that the particles cannot move freely but can only vibrate. So if I bring up the paint program here, and I'll pretend this is we'll say it's an atom, and then this is an atom right here. In a solid, they're stuck together, they're touching, and while they might vibrate, of course they're vibrating because they exist, they're stuck together. Okay? That's the first state of matter. Now, as you add more and more energy to whatever this is, we can say that it's water, or in this state, as a solid, it's ice. You add more and more energy to it, the reaction is it heats up. The sensible temperature, the heat, increases. And eventually, what happens is it gets so much energy, it contains so much energy that the strong bonds that keep the molecules or atoms touching like this and in the same place relative to each other start to break. That's when it changes state from a solid to a liquid. So if we look at the liquid description here, it says a liquid is a nearly incompressible fluid that conforms to the shape of its container but retains a constant volume independent of pressure. Let's see. When a solid is heated above its melting point, it becomes a liquid. So what's happening is the energy keeps getting added to a solid, the forces are broken, and the molecules or atoms, while continuing to touch each other, will move around freely. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know is when a substance like water or ice, when it changes state from a solid to a liquid, in order to change state, you have to continually add more and more heat energy. But while it's changing state, it doesn't raise its temperature, which is an interesting thing. So in a liquid, you have the molecules or atoms moving freely but continuing to touch. That's why you can't really compress a liquid, because the molecules or atoms are still touching. But because they move freely, the shape of the liquid will conform to whatever container you put it in. Now, just like with the solid, as you add more and more heat energy, it moves faster and faster, vibrates more, and eventually it will get to the point where the weaker bonds that are holding this together start to break, and it changes state again from a liquid to a gas. And here we see the description of a gas. A gas is a compressible fluid. Not only will a gas conform to the shape of its container, but it will also expand to fill the container. In a gas, the molecules have enough kinetic energy so that the effect of intermolecular forces is small, or zero in an ideal gas. For the typical distance between neighboring molecules is much greater than the size of the molecule. So what happens is the molecules start to fly apart from each other. There's next to no force acting on each other. And as a result, because the molecules are much further away typically than the actual size of the molecule, the gas can be compressed because you can apply pressure, and that will push the molecules closer and closer together. And eventually you can even apply enough pressure where the gas becomes a fluid, a liquid again, because the molecules start to touch each other again. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about right here. So with this right here, if the gas is not in a container, the molecules will just fly away from each other and the gas will dissipate. So unless you're in a container or you're in a gravity field like the planet Earth holding our atmosphere to us, the gases would just fly away. And then the fourth state of matter, plasma. Like a gas, plasma does not have a definite shape or volume. Unlike gases, plasmas are electrically conductive, produce magnetic fields and electric current, and respond strongly to electromagnetic forces. Positively charged nuclei, or the nucleus of an atom, swim in a sea of free-moving dissociated electrons. So let's look over here. So basically we'll assume this is the nucleus of the atom. What happens is no longer are the individual molecules, have they flown away from each other, but what happens essentially is there's so much energy there that the electrons themselves break away from the individual, the nuclei of the atoms themselves. And because the electrons are what deal with electricity and electrical current flow, because they've broken away, they exist in a gas or a cloud of electrons with just a bunch of the positively charged nuclei there. We have what's referred to as a plasma in this particular state. So in other words, we started with a solid where the pieces, the atoms were touching each other, stuck together but vibrating. Then we had enough energy added where they broke free of staying in the same place, but they still touch. Then we continue to add energy. They change state again to a gas where they start to fly away from each other. And then when you continue to add even more energy, eventually you get to the point where the individual particles of the atom start to fly apart. In other words, the electrons, which are orbiting around the nucleus of the atom, start to fly away also. There's so much energy added. Now in normal matter, that's it. That's all you can do. The next step is to break apart the nuclei of the atoms, and if you do that, you're going to have a big problem. That's where the nuclear explosion type stuff starts happening. So that goes beyond the scope of normal or fundamental states of matter. So those are the four states of matter, and one of the misconceptions is that it doesn't directly deal with the four states of matter per se, but if you'll know in like astrology and the esoteric sciences, there are four elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. And the belief is that the ancients thought that there were only four things that made up everything. And the reality is that's not the case. The ancients, the educated ancients, I should say, understood that there were only four states of the matter. The earth is the solid, the liquid, of course, is the water, the gas is the air, and fire is, in fact, plasma. So those are the 4 states of matter. That's what the 4 elements actually are. It's not that they thought 4 elements made everything. It's that everything that is can only exist in one of those 4 states. So that's the true origin of the 4 states of matter, or the 4 elements in things like astrology and such. Now, I'm quite certain that, as with many things, misinformation got there and the uneducated masses started believing the misinformation, and that's what's propagated and has made it down through the centuries for most people. There are still a few people who actually understand the accurate truth, the real truth, which I just described, but that's another discussion that I don't want to get into right now. Okay, so now we know the law of vibration says that everything vibrates. Now we know that everything vibrates in one of 4 basic states, fundamental states, normally. I mean, there are other states of matter, but they go beyond, like I was talking about, the nuclear stuff. And now I want to talk about something that has to do with the law of vibration, the law of attraction, things of that nature, but can best be understood and visualized with a magnet. And that is, there's a concept that opposites attract. And that is an erroneous concept. And in fact, magnetism might be largely responsible for that misunderstanding. Now, there's an idea in the law of vibration and the law of compensation and the law of all those laws that like attracts like. And a lot of people have a hard time with that because they believe that opposites attract, and then they'll use the magnet as a perfect example of that. And they'll say, take a look at this. When you put North Pole to South Pole, which are opposite poles, the magnet attracts to the other magnet. And if you put North to North, which are like poles, then it's repelled. So of course opposites attract. But what they're not understanding is that it's the forces of the magnetism, the lines of flux, magnetic lines of flux, that have to be oriented in the same direction to attract each other. So in other words, in this instance, we have south pointing to the left here, and the lines of flux are pointing in this direction. And to get the magnets to become attracted to each other, you have to point the second magnet's lines of flux in the same direction, or in a like direction. And when that happens, then the magnet's attracted to each other. So that's what's actually going on. You have to have a like line of magnetic flux to attract to the other line of magnetic flux, or lines of magnetic flux, really. So it is, in fact, magnets are following the principle that like attracts like, and that's one thing that you need to understand, that is how it works. So don't be confused or fall for the misunderstandings because of things like magnetism that seem to show the opposite, that likes repel. That's not actually the case. The next thing I want to talk about really quickly is resonant frequency, and that is, resonant frequency is the oscillation of a system at its natural or unforced resonance. Resonance occurs when a system is able to store or easily transfer energy between different storage modes, such as kinetic energy or potential energy, and so forth and so on. So basically, everything that vibrates, which is everything in the theory of the law of vibration. Everything has a resonant frequency, which is basically its natural frequency that when left alone, it will vibrate at. Okay? So that's an important concept. And then the next one is sympathetic resonance, or sympathetic vibration. It's a harmonic phenomenon wherein a formerly passive string or vibratory body responds to external vibrations to which has a harmonic likeness. So the tuning fork example is probably one of the most one of the most common And that is when you have a tuning fork that's, we'll say, tuned to middle C of a piano, tuned to that frequency. When you have one fork sitting there, maybe mounted on a table or whatever, and you hit one tuning fork and hold it by without actually touching the tuning fork that isn't moving or isn't vibrating at that point in time, it will start resonating with that frequency, because things that are the same size, same resonant, or sorry, had to pause the video and cough there. Things of a like tune or that have the same vibratory structure will have sympathetic resonance, where something will start to resonate because of something else. And I mean, we can dig into this particular thing, sympathetic resonance, a lot more to get a better understanding of it, but I don't want to take the time to do it now because I'm already past 15 minutes. So I'm going to speed things up here just a little bit. So those are the basic concepts that I wanted to talk about. The idea of the law of vibration, the 4 states of matter, that opposites do not attract. In fact, they repel each other. Resonant frequency, that everything that exists has a natural frequency for itself, and that sympathetic vibration is where when one thing can cause another thing to become more active because they have a similar resonant frequency, is basically what it boils down to. So those are the concepts I wanted to get across in this video. One of the misconceptions, of course, had to do with the opposites attract, and another misconception that I wanted to go ahead and deal with is you have a lot of people in the law of vibration arena who talk about raising your vibration to improve yourself. Now, you might need to raise your vibration, but it's also possible you might need to lower your vibration. Because what's actually happening here, as a person, if you raise your vibration too much, what's going to happen? You will damage yourself. You can only raise your vibration so high, and then you're going to literally become ill and then eventually die. And I know a lot of people are like, no, it's the concept of mentally raising your vibration, and that's also wrong. What you're wanting to do is change, which might mean you raise your vibration a little bit. It also means you might lower your vibration a little bit. You want to change your resonant frequency so that you can receive sympathetic vibrations from something that you want. For instance, if you want to be financially secure, or you want to be in business, or you want to be a trader, or you want to go to the gym and exercise, or any kind of thing like that, you will need to adjust your thought process and your physical way of doing things, your behaviors, so that your resonant frequency picks up the sympathetic vibrations of the people and things that are achieving or doing what you want to achieve and do. So the concept where people just, without really thinking, say, oh, you need to raise your vibration to the level where you can achieve this or that, that's not how it works, okay? You might need to, in some situations, raise your vibration, but you might need to lower your vibration. I mean, I used to work a long time ago. I was a maintenance guy. That's what I did before I got into the trading things. I fixed machines and equipment in a warehouse. And one of the warehouses I worked at, there was a guy who was hyperactive, basically. He talked real fast. He moved real fast. He was very annoying, and I kind of befriended him. And I would give him the same advice over and over again, which is you just need to slow down. That's all you need to think about is slow down. And he started, he paid attention to it, listened to it, and started activating that in his life. He started slowing down, talking more slowly, behaving in a manner that was slower in nature. In other words, he literally lowered his vibration to improve his life, because he was adjusting his resonant frequency to become more sympathetic with everyone else around him, and his life improved dramatically from doing that. So that's one example of lowering your vibration to improve your life. And I also hear things where they use lower vibration and higher vibration improperly to describe something that's not as good for you versus something that is better for you. An example of that would be, I've heard numerous people say things along the lines of, a microwave oven will lower the vibration of your food. And what they actually mean is that a microwave oven has the potential of damaging some of the nutrients in your food so that it's not as healthy. And what's actually happening, I mean, if you think about it, when you put food in a microwave and turn the microwave on, what happens? The microwave heats the food up, so it is in fact a higher vibration. The food's vibrating at a higher vibration when it comes out of the microwave. So regardless of whether there's damaged nutrients or not, the food itself is vibrating at a higher level, so its vibration has been raised. The damage to the nutrients comes from the fact that microwaves can cook food so quickly that it damages the structure of some nutrients in some instances. It's the exact same thing happens on a stove. If you put your vegetables in boiling water and boil them that way, you can damage and leach out some of the nutrients. So the concept of saying, because something gets better for you, it's a raised vibration, is wrong in some instances. And the idea or the habit of using a raised vibration to mean better and lowered vibration to mean worse is a bad habit to get into, because it's not accurately descriptive of the law of vibration or the law of compensation or the law of anything else you want to think about that has to do with this. So those are the couple of things that I wanted to lay as a foundation, and then a couple of misinformations or misconcepts that I wanted to clear up, because those things are important to understand correctly if you really want to understand it. Because as people start to learn more and more about the law of vibration and start to work with it on any level of life, having those misconceptions can impede your ability to progress in this field. So anyway, video's already 22 minutes long, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. And like I said, the next video I do is not going to be about the law of vibration. I'll wait another week or two before I do the next one of those. But until next time, this is hwsteele, and I will talk to you later.